Hello, folks. I hope it's been a good summer for you guys. I haven't been on here for a while due to the summer activities with the kids. I'm back now. I also had a YouTube strike for a while. But anyway, I'm back now to bring you another update on the special military operations in Ukraine. Things have been happening this week, so let's get into it. I will give you the update as I see things, and then go from there and start and show you some tales of the telegram. All right. So if you haven't been on here before, I'm your host Sankara, and I usually try to start off by presenting you a whole map of Ukraine. So at the start of the military operations, Russia launched several different launched their attack on several different axes in the north, in the east, and in the south. They came around Kiev and to prepare the battlefield for the east. And then once they prepared the battlefield for the east, they withdrew. So most of the activities is here. All this area here in the pink or red, those are the areas that the Russians have control of. So that spans from Kharkov all the way down to Kherson. So as we look at this battle map, we look at there's the Kharkov area, there's the Donetsk area, you got Zaporizhia, and then Kherson. Right now, things are happening mostly things are happening in Donetsk and in Kherson. Before I proceed, though, I want to point out this map is very pro-Ukrainian, so sometimes it doesn't show activities that's happening, gains from the Russians till it's been a while and it has been established by everyone. But usually, any Ukrainian gain, they usually put it on the map. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Let's go into most of the activities lately has been in Kherson. That's where the big counteroffensives supposed to happen, and that's where I will focus most of my attention this time. But let me just touch a little bit on a few areas. So let's start with Kharkov. In the Kharkov region, the Russians can clear some villages, and the Russians are, let's say, usually mostly they're just hitting the Kraken division over there, destroying them a lot in that region. So there are a lot of artillery or missile targets here. There's not much fighting. There are little positional battles going on, but I think the Ukrainians, to some extent, learned their lesson. The last time the Russians pulled back to allow them to come out, when they came out, the Russians destroyed them. So they haven't come out to fight in earnest yet. There was supposed to be some Kherson, some Kharkov counteroffensive as well, but the Russians dropped them. I think about a week ago, the Russians dropped some missiles on them, and that is going to stay as is for a while. Apparently, they wanted to attack somewhere in the Izium direction, so somewhere down south of Kharkov. That's where they wanted to come, but that didn't materialize. It hasn't materialized. So let's go from there. So now we come to the Donetsk area. So in the Donetsk region, we see that the Russians right around this line, this Siversk, Solidar, Bakhmut. The Russians, one of the things they're doing, because they have a fire superiority, they can pick their battle areas wherein they're going to attack. So everybody was expecting that the Russians were going to attack in Siversk, in the Siversk direction and seize Siversk. But then, when the Ukrainians went and rushed forces up to Siversk, when they did that, the Russians then attacked from the south, taking out Svitlodarsk, and they are now have some forces in Bakhmut. Bakhmut is also known as Artyomovsk. It was Artyomovsk before it was renamed as Bakhmut by the Ukrainians. And then they are also attacking in Solidar. One of the funniest, the interesting thing I like is that there's a street that the Russians took over in, are fighting from in Bakhmut. Is called Patrice Lumumba Street. That I found that very interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so the Russians are attacking in this area, and they have actually moved a little bit close. But again, this is a very pro-Ukrainian map. They are a lot more closer. They have not seized Bakhmut totally yet in Solidar, but they're fighting closer in there. So this map, if it gets updated, you will see some advances. They also fought a little bit and down here. They are closer. They are halfway into Marienka. They have taken half of the village yet, and there are reports that they pretty much they are mopping that up. And then there's Zaisevo. They about almost have taken over the whole of Zaisevo. Not fully yet, but they have taken a large part of it. And then they're also close at Ulidar or Vulidar, as you will see. So that's what the activities has been in the east, in Donetsk. Ramzan Kadyrov said that at some point in time, what the Russians did was that they did a little pause and did some probing attacks to see how the Ukrainians were going to counter. And now they have seen how the Ukrainians are going to counter, so things are going to be stepped up a lot and later. Well, we'll have to see that, whether that's true or not. Another thing that has been reported is that there's this talk that the U.S. talk about a fourth corps, or third corps that the Russian is bringing into the battle. That corps actually is volunteers from the republics. It's not a corps from the Russian side. These are volunteers from the republics, people from the Donetsk, Lugansk area that were trained to Russian standards and will be equipped with Russian and weaponry, and they're coming and they are coming to the battle in Donetsk. So there's a talk that things are going to step up in Donetsk. Now, what is going to be along these lines? I'm hearing people talk about they're calling this defensive line as the, how you call it, a Zelensky line. But there's going to be serious fight in that area, or they're going to move to other areas. That force is available. Now, if it is a corps, that means there are at least, at the minimum, they're around 30,000, but most likely around 45,000 men. But then I heard on one of this guy, Alexander Mercury's stuff, that he heard, saying that he heard, by the way, I haven't heard it, but he heard that it was more of an army, not a corps. If it's an army, that's a bigger issue. That means that it's around 100,000 men that the Russians have trained. Now, that's possible too. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but that's a large amount of force. That would tell me, if it's an army, that they haven't. This is not something that just started recently or just since this war started. They have probably been in training for a little bit, maybe at least a year before February 24th or so. That's what I would believe. Even if it is a corps, I think it would have to be longer than for them to be updated to the Russian standards. I mean, granted, the Russians able to they train a capable Syrian fighting force in a matter of what 4 months. But then again, this war is conventional war, so things might be a little bit different. But yeah, that's what's happening on the east. Now let's go down to the south. So we'll go down to the south, and we're going to go around Kherson area because a lot of the big activities, at least all the noise, is happening around Kherson. So last week, all of last week, the Ukrainians launched their vaunted, how we call it, a counteroffensive, which I usually call a photo shoot. They launched their vaunted photo shoot to capture Kherson, or at least to break through and break into Kherson. For, I mean, I think a period of 3 days that attack was going on, and as we have learned now, as things have developed now, we've learned that they attacked first with a first wave of 5,000 troops. Then they attacked with a second wave of 10,000 troops. In all of those waves, the Russians beat them back and bloodied them seriously. So one of the things that the Russians did, and this shouldn't be strange to people who actually study Russian tactics. This shouldn't be strange at all. The Russians, when they attacked, especially in an area, in an area across the Seversky Donetsk. I'm not Seversky Donetsk, my bad. Across the Ingulets River, when they attacked, what the Russians did is that the Russians bombarded them, and then bombarded them for a while, causing a lot of casualties. Then the Russians pulled back to another defensive line. Then they rushed in. Then it bombarded them again. Then the Russians pulled back again to a further defensive line. And then when the rush did, the Russians bombarded them and then flanked them, cutting off that force that came forward, cutting off that force. And then in a village called Bezimini, the Russians went ahead and dropped. I mean, it was empty town or village. The Russians pretty much obliterated the Ukrainian forces in that town, dropping, let's say, 500-pound bombs, about 24 of them in that area, and just decimated that force. And then they cutting them off from the flanks. The remaining there, the Russians started to deal with them. So then the Ukrainians tried to come and de-block that unit. As the Russians sat there while they were trying to de-block that unit, the Russians then went and destroyed the pontoon bridges that they created across the Ingulets River, and trapping them and sent some forces on the north side, or I would say the western side of the Ingulets River, and then put those Ukrainian forces again in encirclement, and then started dealing with them there again. There is report, and very credible reports, that the Ukrainians in that battle lost around about, in that 3 to 4 days, they lost around about 3,000 men and dead. That's irretrievable losses. And then about some 8,000 wounded. And there are a lot of videos of you see of a lot of ambulances and going to Odessa, taking and wounded. Here's a couple of things that I would say. For a period of time, the Russians did not allow the Ukrainians to build up forces in Nikolaev. So if you remember, every now and then when the Ukrainians built up forces in Nikolaev, they were getting struck. And then they would have to build up forces again. They would take them from Kryvyi Rog So they would take forces from here, bring them down to the Nikolaev region, and then they would get struck. The Russians did this for a while and not letting them build up the forces. It was so bad that the Ukrainians decided to disperse their forces, sleeping even under railway bridges and stuff like that, so as to not be in one area. But then, all of a sudden, it seemed like the Russians stopped doing that. That to me should have told the Ukrainians that the Russians were setting a trap up for them. But apparently, they did not understand that. So they built up their forces. They built up their forces and then decided to attack the Russians again. So the Russians sat there, allowed that to happen. They built up their forces, allowed them to build 3 pontoon bridges to come across the Ingles River, right? And then, so along here, this the Ingles River. I think either this or this one. Let me make sure. But they build up the forces along the, I think it is this one, the Ingles River. They build up their forces along the Ingles River and cross the Ingles and then try to come. So the Russians allowed them to come, and then when they came in, the Russians destroyed them. Now, this is classic Russian military tactic. Maskirovka, the operations, and Maskirovka is practiced all throughout the Russian military. It's in intelligence. I mean, it's everywhere. They mask things and overmask things. So that's what the Russians do. Sometimes, even when they're on the offense, when Russians are on the offense, they will allow an element in the echelon as they're attacking. They will allow an element in it, especially when they're coming across a stiff resistance. They will allow an element in their echelon to pull back, to do a localized retrograde movement, which means they will pull back. When they do pull back, they will already have prepared the area that element was in for artillery strike. And then the enemy will come in. When the enemy comes in, they will get strike. As they come in thinking that they have now succeeded in pushing the Russian back, not knowing they find themselves bombarded heavily with artillery. Then the Russians will come and try to cut them off. So this is something that the Russians did. In this case, the Russian was on the defensive, so they open up, let them come in, and then destroy them. Now, there's talk that the Ukrainians are going to send a third wave, and then either a third and fourth wave, and those waves going to be between 10 to 20,000 men going to come again. Now, the couple of things happening that I'm seeing, I'm trying to get my head around with regards to the Ukrainians. They're losing a lot of men. To send 15,000 men in, 3,000 get slaughtered, and another 8,000 wounded. That's about what? That's about 11,000 of that 15,000 that became casualties. So to then come again and say you're sending more of those men in those areas, it would seem that someone don't care about the lives of the men that they wasted. And these forces were supposed to be some of the remaining of the trained combat and the experienced combat troops. Now, the forces that coming later on, that will come in the third and fourth wave, are going to be mixed with the territorial defense forces, those civilians that were brought up during the war, right before the war or during the war, to buttress the Ukrainian military numbers. So that means they will be less trained. So my thought is that it is just a callous way to lose men. But then as I was sitting and thinking about things, it's no less callous. But I heard about there's this U.S. Study done by Captain, I think Captain Fury, who said that if you attack the Russian battalion tactical groups on multiple fronts, they are going to be vulnerable because of lack of communications and stuff between them, and that would be able you will be able to exhaust them and be able to pretty much defeat them one by one. And that certainly is how the Ukrainians attacked. They attacked on multiple fronts, but then they got beat back on multiple fronts. So what this is telling me is that part of the reason that the NATO advisors are and U.S. advisors are making the Ukrainians do this is so that they can learn about the Russians' vulnerabilities for future. So they got free real life study using Ukrainian bodies. It's no less callous. It's no less callous because hey, it's the Ukrainians' problem, right? Not the American problems, not the American problem at all. If the Ukrainians sit there and continue to let their forces get decimated like that, and they don't care, why should the Americans, the British, or the NATO people care? They can fight Russia as best as they can. They want with the theories that they have in mind, and still be able to. They're not losing anything. They'll still be able to gain information, albeit Russia Russia will win, but they're still getting invaluable information. Right. Another thing in this Kherson area is that I black out that noise right before the counteroffensive started. The Russians had actually seized this area, and then with the counteroffensive and stuff, they push a little bit further, but they have seized black out that noise, this area. So, anyways, going to go now and get some videos to be able to show you guys some of what's happening. And I will show you a better map that shows example of what the fighting was in Kherson. Let me go and do that. So one of the places I was telling you about when the Ukrainians came across the Ingles River here in Andreevka sector, this was one of the big areas that the Russians allowed them to push into around Suki Stavok area. So right here, they went ahead. They put a pontoon bridge here. They built another pontoon bridge here to get across the Ingles River, and they attacked. They had attacked, and they had actually gone all the way down to this area here. They had gotten all the way down here. Then, because when they attacked first, the Russians blasted them to kill a lot of them. Then the Russians pulled back. Then they came again. The Russians blasted them. The Russians pulled back, and they kept coming. And when they got all the way here, the Russians then blasted them and then launched a flanking attack in these areas to cut them off. Dealt with the forces here. Then went ahead and destroyed the bridges that were along here first and fought them back. They keep bringing forces, and so far I'm hearing that they're going to keep bringing more forces across the Ingulets to try to expand their bridgehead here. So they made this bridgehead, they got here, but now they got all the way here, and so maybe they look at that and thinking that maybe those areas were success areas. So maybe we'll continue to try to attack that. It is a bad idea. is a bad idea, and the Russians will bleed them there, bleed them. Because remember, across this whole area here, this is steppes. So that the Russians are letting them come is because the Russians want them to come, want them to bring those forces to get them exposed, and then and deal with them. Yeah. So if they keep doing it, I mean, as I'm hearing about this third and fourth wave of 20,000 men, I mean, if you losing 8,000 out of no 11,000 out of 15,000 men, ha, that's a bad that's a hell of a price to pay to go and take in that area. There was another area a little bit north that the in Visokopolye, wherein they attacked from Oleni and in a pincer and tried to catch they tried to catch a VDV unit, a circle of VDV unit. Again, the VDV pulled out, and that was yesterday. They pulled out from the place, allowed them to capture it. The Ukrainians went and put a flag up on a building to take pictures of, obviously, because that's what this war is about, I guess, to take pictures. And then the VDV been trying to capture that, recapture that place, and once they got reinforcements. There's also reports and of seeing pictures of more tanks coming across the Crimea Bridge, more reinforcements coming that the Russians are going to bring into the Kherson sector to be able to deal with these guys. So let's see. They're stubborn. They're going to continue putting it there. At least the U.S. will be getting valuable information. Not sure that they can do much about it, but the Ukrainians are fighting to their standards. So they're seeing how the Russians are dismantling that. As I've said before, the U.S. have seen the results, and I say results particularly for a reason, because they don't seem to be ahead of understanding what the Russians would do. The Russians have been very good with Operation Security. They have seen the results, and I promise you, the U.S. and the NATO are shocked about this. Now, this is the area around Visokopilye, where they were in this region here. They had VDV forces in this region, not a lot of VDV forces within this region. The Ukrainians, using a pincer movement, tried to cut them off. So, like a good military is supposed to do, the VDV pull out of this area. This is more towards the north of the Kherson Kryvor Rock direction, and so the VDV pulled out instead of being cut off like the Ukrainians do, just stubborn defense. The Russians use mobile defense, pull out, and later on they are now going back to attack the area. So they from Oleni and Potomkin, that's where the Ukrainians attacked on the flanks to capture. I guess they wanted to capture those VDV troops. Here's the picture of the picture they took once they took some area, some building or so in that area. So far, that's the fruit of the labor for losing 11,000 men, right? They also were attacking in this area, Archangelsk, in this area, but that hasn't been successful either. It hasn't been successful either. And I think they're playing into the Russian hands. This is a video of some of the destruction brought on to Ukrainian forces when they attack in the Nikolaev Kryvor Rock area around Archangelsk, and this is some of the destructions that they faced. This thing blown up to pieces. More tanks. Some vehicles all along the Inglis there. See those things. I mean, they got smoked to smithereens. All right, so let's go find another video. Remember the map I showed you before when the Russians allowed the Ukrainian forces to come in. By the time the map I show you is the later map, and all of this blue area had been colored red now and yellow, and the Ukrainians were back around here. That was what happened in the beginning of the week. So again, the Russians allowed them to cross along the English River. They came through. They attacked down here. They went down all the way to Suki Stavok. They came down here. Somewhere below here is the town of Bizamini, where they got destroyed. And I mean, it wasn't pretty. They got destroyed. So the Russians backed down all the way here, let them come all the way in, and then they launched a counter. And they launched a counter and cut them off, and then dealt with the guys here. And then they launched another counter from Belogorka and Belogorka. They came here and pushed those guys here. The Russians then had gone, destroyed this stuff, and then for a period of time they had cut off the remaining troops. So then the Ukrainians were fighting to de-block those guys. They killed a lot of them here. The Russians pulled back after they killed a lot of them and pushed them closer. But even up to today, they're still trying to send more forces in there, and they're playing into the Russians' hands. As you look at this place, there's no hills here. There are no covered, canopy for trees and stuff like that. This is open steppe, and they keep coming, and the Russians have the firepower, so they're going to get themselves slaughtered. Here is a video of the Ukrainians as they were trying, when they started the counteroffensive, trying to attack the Russians, and they had the tanks going and trying to, and then infantry behind the tanks. As the tanks ahead, the Russians was bombarding them with artillery. So here is it. That's how the week started last week. So you see Ukrainian infantry, and you will see the tanks will climb up to the hill and fire. So that's when the Ukrainians were attacking. So when the IAEA guys were going to Energoda, to the nuclear power plant, the Ukrainians launched a raid. According to the Russians, first they sent 60 commandos, and then follow up by two large barges with about 150 men on each of those barges that were going to support them, and they were trying to seize the nuclear power plant. But they got smoked, and so this is the body of them. From what I've read, and whether it is true or not, I don't know, but the Russians knew about this commando unit and knew about what their plans were all the way when they were training in England, right? And because that operation, it was set up for them by MI6 for them to seize the nuclear power plant. So this is the body, and he counting them. From what I've heard, he pointed that guy is number 35.
36. Сука, блин. 37. Десант хуев.
So the Russians ambushed the unit as they got off the 60 groups, the group of 60 that came across that took the Dnieper and came and tried to seize the nuclear power plant. The Russians smoked them. So this video shows some of the bodies in the Dnieper River. Those were some of the guys who tried to seize the nuclear power plant in Energoda. So some Russian channels, some pro-Russian channels, those I would call the hysterical ones. First of all, they are for Russia winning, but they want Russia to pretty much destroy Ukraine already. They don't. They just want Russia with a heavy hand go in there and just destroy everything. And so they're bound to pick. They are like I would say ultra patriotic type who just want everything to be destroyed. Russia must go and just pretty much destroy Ukraine already. Those group with Igor Strukov, they always kind of like the doubting Thomas in this war. So they doubted that they said that the Ukrainians trying to seize the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was not true. That the Russians were making it out because the Russians didn't give them a lot of videos showing evidence of this attack. And so this is one of the videos here showing bodies in the sea. Now, some of those guys, they pretty much, they're on the Russian side, but they pretty much want a heavy-handed Russian approach. And this meticulous, fine and green approach that Putin take, they don't like it. And they just want, in fact, some of them want this guy's channel who I'm looking at, Zrada. If it left with him, Russia must be fighting NATO already. So this is what this photo shows, is some of the bodies. So far, people try to be, they try to say they don't want to tell to say what the Russian Ministry of Defense, they don't want to fully agree with what the Russian Ministry of Defense says so that they can be impartial. My take is that I know the position I take in this war, first thing. Secondly, Russia, to date, when Russia have stated something, it has been true. The Ukrainians have lied all day. The Ukrainians, the West, have lied from Ghosts of Kiev to wherever. So until the Russians show me something that is not true, I tend to believe believe in their statements, especially when it comes from the official the Ministry of Defense. I tend to believe their statements. They don't have reason to lie in this case here much. There are other things that they would do from a propaganda perspective, but one of the things they have constantly stayed on in this war is they have let the truth, the reality speak for itself. And so if they said that those guys attack and try to attack the nuclear power plant, they did, and I believe it. This is a video of a Ukrainian soldier, and basically he's showing that his company about 100, maybe about 150,000 men or so, about just over 100,000 or 150,000 men, showing that that company of about 100 and something men were have been reduced down to only 7. And he's lamenting the death. I mean, from a human perspective, you can understand how he feels, but that's what this video is about. Can you show who else left? Some of the company. You see he's crying. Men at war. Painful. But to fight for another country, that's not fighting for your country. Let this be the last video of my update. This is a video about the Antonovsky Bridge. The Ukrainians been striking the bridge, but the Russians are building a pontoon to cross the bridge. There's been a whole lot of talk about the Ukrainians striking this bridge, and if they destroy the bridge, Russia cannot support the forces on the west side of the Dnieper River in Kherson, and they will be stuck. This is all nonsense. All it does is that it gave them another issue to solve. That's all it does. For a good well-built military, or competent military, that is not an issue, and certainly not for Russia. They're very good at this. So it's showing you, one, they have these pontoon bridges that they cross, kind of like a ferry things across, and then they also transport, how you call the thing, they're also building a bridge under the bridge that the HIMARS can struck. So this is not a problem, and I'm sure there are other areas in which they will also build more pontoons. So this is a non-issue. I wanted to show I wanted to show again another a map that shows how far the Russians allowed these guys to come from around Andreevka. So yes, Andreevka, the Russians are allowed them to come all the way here, and then in Bezimeni, the Russians struck them. Then the Russians cut them off as I forgot the name now, but the Russians struck them and then launched counters here to cut these guys off, and all along here. So the video I showed you before, where all this area had turned back red and orange and stuff like that, while the places where the Russians have pushed them back and destroyed them, and then they were here, but they're still trying to bring more forces across the Ingulets River. So yeah, the pontoon and crossings that they've made. This is a video of one of the destroyed pontoon bridges across the Ingulets. You see one of the NATO type vehicles that were given to how you call it, to Ukraine.
Итак, мы форсировали речку Ингул.
Pay attention to that. The Ukrainians, you don't see a lot of bodies here in this one year. That's to tell you that you don't just go and put men on the bridge, on the crossing, and then let them get killed. That nonsense people were talking about, Russian letting a whole battalion get killed in Seversky Donetsk, going back to a months ago. That's to tell you that's a lie. If the Ukrainians, who are stubborn and stupid, can't and don't just throw men across in a contested crossing, why would the Russians do that? Yeah. But anyway, this is it for today. If you enjoyed the video, please, by all means, subscribe, give a like, comment. Let's have a discussion to the trolls, and the pro-Ukrainians trolls. I know you guys are coping right now. I hope you feel it a lot more. But all means, come on. I guess I know you guys were the pro-Ukrainian trolls might have been salivating when they thought they were going to, when they heard that they were going to get the VDV around around Olenay area, the in Visikopolia. So I guess maybe they were salivating that they would capture some VDV, and there a lot of the Russian dead VDVs or POWs were being shown where there's not. So the Russians know what they're doing in this war. And to the pro-Russians who are even more gung-ho and want the Russians to do better, maybe you should try to understand the Russian strategy before you criticize. War is not just about that. It's about economics as well. And the Russians are fighting this war in a proper way. In fact, the Russians have been so great in this war that I promise you there will be another Colonel David Glantz to show the truth and to show what great of a feat that they were able to do, coming into a war with such a advanced military, near peer competitor, using less than the required amount of forces to attack, and still being able to dominate in the way that they did. All right, talk to you guys. See you guys maybe in the interweb a little later. Bye.